In the frozen silence of the snow-chained mountains, a new master had arrived. Without a single battle or proclamation, an entire clan abandoned the land they had fought a century to claim. Hidden beneath layers of mist and frost, an unknown nascent soul cultivator began a secluded cultivation that would quietly shake the balance of the region. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, please consider supporting us through the donation. It really motivates us to keep creating. Starlight burst brilliantly from the plate. After a brief moment, it expanded outward, unfurling into a disk of light nearly 10 meters wide. Suspended in the air, it spun slowly as golden starlight shimmered across its surface, the glimmers gradually gathering toward its center like a newborn galaxy. Then the disk shuddered violently. A pillar of golden radiance a meter thick erupted from its core and shot upward, piercing straight through the faint yellow clouds hanging above. A world-shaking tremor followed. The clouds surrounding the pillar churned and roiled, and the entire ninth-floor pocket dimension began to quiver as though the heavens themselves had been struck. The beam painted the sky in a dim yellow glow. From its center, black fissures began to appear, thin at first, then multiplying, spreading across the heavens like fractures in a pane of glass. As time passed, the cracks grew more numerous and gathered ever more densely. Ethereal, otherworldly notes drifted through the air. Around the pillar, a colossal passage slowly opened, as though space itself were being peeled apart. Countless rainbow lights the size of fists scattered through the air, glittering like fragments of a shattered dream. The foot-wide plate rose slowly along the golden pillar until it reached the mouth of the passage. There it halted, gleaming with soft golden light, the star-defying plate that Ling Long had released earlier. Below, the silver light on the ground gradually faded, revealing Ling Long's figure. She lifted her delicate head and gazed up toward the passage. A faint loneliness flickered within her eyes. In the next instant, her body blurred. She appeared above the wheel of light and slowly drifted toward the passage in the sky. As she drew closer, the passage seemed to respond. A deep humming sound began to resonate through the air. The star-defying plate trembled faintly as well, spinning faster and faster, as if excited by its proximity to the gateway. Ling Long smiled faintly at the sight. Then she turned and cast a long, quiet glance at Han Li. Without the slightest hesitation, she raised her hand and released a streak of yellow, white, and red light toward him. Han Li was momentarily stunned, but he quickly realized that she meant him no harm. With an unconscious flick of his sleeve, he summoned a cloud of azure mist that swept up the incoming lights. The three-colored radiance settled into his hand, revealing a white jade slip, a blood-red blade, and the final Worldbreaker talisman. Han Li felt his heart tremble slightly, yet he remained silent. A soft sigh drifted from Ling Long's lips. That jade slip contains information regarding reverse spirit streams and spatial nodes, she said calmly. It is far more detailed than what I gave the other two. I believe you will make good use of it. She paused briefly. As for the talisman and the blade, they are of no use to me where I am going. You may keep them. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment before she continued. And since it will be difficult for you to leave this mountain while carrying spirit treasures, I will offer you one final bit of assistance. Before Han Li could even understand what she meant, Ling Long raised a finger and pointed toward the star-defying plate above her. The plate immediately rang with a series of resonant chimes. Its center shifted, pointing directly at Han Li. A burst of light flared. A beam shot forth, twisting strangely through the air before warping into existence before Han Li. It then shattered into countless rays, enveloping both him and the human-shaped puppet standing behind him. Before he could react, Han Li and the puppet vanished without a trace. Having finished this, Ling Long turned and stepped into the passage at last. Radiant light poured out from the portal as Ling Long and the star-defying plate seemed to merge together within the glow. Then, with a thunderous roar, the passage distorted violently, and she disappeared. Moments later, the entrance collapsed. The gateway fractured piece by piece, before dissolving in one final burst of breathtaking radiance. When the light faded, the ninth-floor pocket dimension was left in utter silence. and complete ruin. Xiang Jili, Corpse Xiong, and Lin Yinping emerged from the depths of the devil-suppressing pagoda. At the exact moment Han Li vanished, Xiang Jili suddenly raised his head and glanced toward the sky, an odd expression crossing his face. Did fellow Taoist Xiang discover something? Corpse Xiong asked. Although his cultivation was somewhat inferior, his background was formidable, and he spoke without hesitation, unafraid that Xiang Jili might suddenly turn hostile. "It's nothing," Xiang Jili replied with a frown, idly stroking his beard. "Perhaps I was mistaken. For a moment I felt as though Kunwu Mountain's seal had been disturbed. Yet my spiritual sense detected nothing." Corpse Xiong gave a quiet chuckle. It was likely just a fluctuation caused by the seal weakening. No one should possess the power necessary to disturb a barrier of this magnitude. "That may be true," Xiang Jili said slowly. Then he seemed to recall something. "Ah, yes. Earlier you mentioned that all of this was incited by the Ye clan. Are they all dead now?" "Their grand elder was a late nascent soul cultivator. He should have possessed some ability." Corpse Xiong laughed dryly. "The other Ye clan cultivators were already slain by the devil. As for the Grand Elder, I have not seen him since entering the 9th floor. He most likely met his end at the devil's hands as well." Xiang Jili snorted softly. A cold light flickered through his eyes. "No matter. Whether he lives or dies is irrelevant. Since he provoked such a calamity, the Ye clan has forfeited its right to exist." His relaxed demeanor vanished entirely, replaced by an expression as cold and rigid as stone. "Once I return, the greatest clan of the Great Jin will change." He glanced toward Corpse Xiong. "Surely your myriad demon valley has no objections." Corpse Xiong's heart skipped a beat. "Of course not," he said immediately. "Although the Ye clan once maintained friendly relations with the valley, they committed an unforgivable error. Their eradication is only proper." "Good," Xiang Jili said. He then turned his gaze toward Lin Yinping. "Fellow Taoist Lin, once you leave the mountain, you should immediately return to the plains. You have already overstayed your welcome. In the future, refrain from sending more people to the Great Jin." "I understand," Lin Yinping replied respectfully, her heart trembling beneath Xiang Jili's emotionless gaze. "Once I leave the mountain, I will immediately return to the plains." In truth, she had no intention of resisting. Not only was she wary of Xiang Jili, but she was still bound by Han Li's restriction. If he somehow survived, it would be far better to avoid encountering him again. Moreover, she planned to return to the Endless Sky Temple and see whether their nascent soul cultivators could find a method to remove the restriction. Seeing her obedient response, Xiang Jili's hostility lessened. Just as he was about to speak again, a streak of white light suddenly tore through the sky, rushing toward them with incredible speed. Corpse Xiong was instantly alarmed and prepared to intercept it. But in the next moment, the air around him froze. An overwhelming pressure descended upon him like a mountain. "Fellow Taoist Xiong, do not panic," Xiang Jili said calmly. "It is merely a flying sword messenger from fellow Taoist Hu of the Heavenly Devil sect." Soon afterward, Xiang Jili raised his hand and beckoned. The streak of light circled briefly in the air before descending into his palm, fading into a small white sword. At the same time, the immense pressure weighing upon Corpse Xiong vanished. Though nothing had actually happened, cold sweat soaked his back. Xiang Jili clasped the small sword between his palms and lowered his head in silence. Moments later, he tossed it back into the air. It vanished in a flash of white light. "Let's go," Xiang Jili said calmly, gazing in the direction where the light had disappeared. "Fellow Taoist Hu has already entered the mountain. We will meet with him. After that, we will gather the sects of Nanjiang and reseal the mountain immediately." Corpse Xiong and Lin Yinping naturally raised no objections. As for Ling Long and Han Li, they paid them no further attention. On a beautiful mountaintop somewhere in Nanjiang, several qi condensation cultivators sat within a small pavilion, discussing the recent disturbances throughout the region. A middle-aged man in white robes was currently listing his speculations about what might lie within the mysterious seal, when suddenly a golden beam flashed across the sky above them. With a deafening explosion, a pillar of light crashed down, obliterating most of the pavilion in an instant. The stunned cultivators looked up in astonishment. Within the blazing column of light stood an azure-robed cultivator and a silver silhouette. The azure-robed cultivator staggered slightly as if suddenly losing his footing. With a casual wave of his hand, the silver silhouette instantly vanished. The low-level cultivators were so shocked that they stood frozen like statues. After regaining his balance, Han Li slowly scanned his surroundings and noticed the cultivators below him. In a calm yet commanding voice, he asked, "Where is this place?" Although his tone was flat, it carried an undeniable authority. The chi condensation cultivators finally snapped out of their shock and looked toward him. Their expressions changed drastically. None of them could see through his cultivation. Among them, the white-robed cultivator possessed the highest cultivation. Though inwardly terrified, he forced himself to step forward. "This is Gold Image Mountain," he said respectfully. "May I ask Senior for his esteemed name?" Ignoring the question entirely, Han Li continued expressionlessly. "Gold Image Mountain. I have never heard of it. Are we still in Nanjiang?" A shorter cultivator hurriedly answered. "Yes, Senior. This is Zhonglo Prefecture of Nanjiang." "Ah, I see." Han Li nodded slowly, a trace of understanding appearing on his face. Zhonglo Prefecture was the neighboring province to Puyan Prefecture, where Kunwu Mountain had been sealed. It seemed he had not been teleported very far. The several chi condensation cultivators in the pavilion were either wandering vagrants or members of small, obscure clans. When a cultivator of such profound stature suddenly appeared before them, they felt their breaths grow shallow. None of them could see through his cultivation. That alone meant he was at the very least a core formation cultivator. Under normal circumstances, they would not even possess the qualifications to address someone of such lofty status. At most, they could only watch such figures from afar, like mortals gazing at distant stars. Upon hearing that he was still within Nanjiang, Han Li's expression eased slightly. With a casual sweep of his sleeve, several streaks of azure light shot forth and entered the bodies of the cultivators one after another. They collapsed to the ground, instantly utterly powerless to resist. Without a word, Han Li raised his hand and beckoned. One of the unconscious cultivators was pulled into the air and grasped firmly in his hand. His fingers closed around the man's skull. A faint azure glow began to shine. Moments later, the light faded. The cultivator dropped limply from Han Li's hand like a discarded rag. Han Li then repeated the same process with the rest. By the time it took for a cup of tea to grow cold, he had finished. As the final cultivator slumped to the ground, Han Li glanced at them briefly and muttered to himself, "It would certainly be simpler to kill them. But I am not so ruthless." His gaze lingered on them for a moment. They are fortunate enough to trade a few memories for their lives. With that, Han Li confirmed his direction before transforming into a streak of azure light that shot into the distant sky. 2 hours later, the cultivators slowly regained consciousness. The moment they realized they had somehow fallen unconscious, cries of alarm erupted. Although none of them could remember what had happened, a lingering terror remained buried deep within their hearts. Without hesitation, they fled the mountain as quickly as possible. By that time, Han Li was already tens of thousands of kilometers away. He flew through the sky at a leisurely pace while calmly examining the white jade slip Ling Long had given him earlier. Not long afterward, he sighed softly and put the jade slip away, falling into deep contemplation. The information contained within it could be divided into 2 distinct parts. The first was an introduction to reverse spirit streams, along with a profound grand spell formation used by cultivators of the spirit realm to open them. The formation was unimaginably complex. Not only that, but it required top-grade spirit stones to activate. The quantity mentioned in the jade slip was so staggering that even Han Li was momentarily speechless. Even if such a formation could not be used directly within the mortal realm, careful study might allow him to create a simplified version. If he succeeded, the knowledge could prove extremely useful. The second portion concerned spatial nodes within the mortal realm. Not only did the jade slip describe the types of places where such nodes could most easily appear. It also recorded more than a dozen nodes that had existed in the past, each with their locations described in astonishing detail. By comparison, the information Xiang Zhili and Corpse Qiong had received was only a small fragment. As Han Li continued pondering these matters, a faint smile slowly appeared on his contemplative face. Regardless of how valuable the jade slip might prove in the future, his most urgent priority remained the same: reaching the late nascent soul stage. After all, spatial nodes could only be safely traversed by cultivators who had reached the early deity transformation stage. Only then would a nascent soul become condensed enough to withstand the terrifying spatial turbulence within the nodes. Otherwise, death would be inevitable. Fortunately, Han Li had already obtained the nascent cultivating pill and the method for dissolving the soul curse seal. What he lacked now was merely the medicinal pill required to remove the curse. The profound ice pill was an ice-attributed medicine similar to the snow soul pill, but its main ingredient was the profound ice flower. That difference alone made everything far more difficult. The profound ice flower was exceedingly rare. It grew only upon 10,000-year profound ice, and once plucked, the flower would melt almost instantly, causing its medicinal power to vanish completely. Not only were such flowers extraordinarily rare, but demand for them was also immense. Many sects cultivated them, yet the moment one bloomed, it would immediately be harvested and used. As a result, the flower almost never appeared in auctions. Although the medicine required to dissolve the curse was not found on old Devil Qian's body, it would almost certainly exist somewhere within the yin-sifting sect. However, Han Li had no confidence in storming the headquarters of one of the great Jin's most powerful sects, even if he could somehow ignore the countless cultivators stationed there. The sect's grand protective formation alone would prevent him from infiltrating it. After all, the difference between an unmanned formation and one actively controlled by cultivators was like the difference between night and day. According to the Profound Ice Pill's formula, the Profound Ice Flower could be substituted with other ice-attributed medicines, but doing so would drastically reduce the pill's effectiveness. Han Li had no intention of leaving such matters to chance. Thus, he decided he would travel to a glacial region. His destination was clear: the North Night Palace of Bai Yaoyi. The palace stood upon North Night Island, a place famed for its eternal frost. If profound ice flowers could be found anywhere, it would surely be there. In addition, Han Li was curious about the glacial quintessence. He also wished to see whether the palace possessed any Pursun flame essence. After all, the sect had possessed glacial quintessence for countless years. Even if they did not have any Pursun flame essence themselves, they might at least know where it could be found. Of course, Han Li had no intention of heading directly to North Night Island. For now, he wished to lie low until the rumors surrounding Kunwu Mountain faded. Moreover, he had several important matters to handle, matters that might take several years. With that thought, Han Li made his decision. He turned north. Along the way, he passed through more than a dozen provinces before eventually arriving in the vast Shuang region. Although the region was not the northernmost territory of the Jin Empire, it might as well have been. Snow covered the land as far as the eye could see. Because of the harsh climate, the region was sparsely populated. Spirit mountains and spirit veins were rare, and those that did exist were generally inferior in quality. As a result, few of the great Jin's major sects bothered to establish themselves there. Instead, the region was occupied mostly by small clans and wandering cultivators. Despite its poor resources, the Shuang region was enormous in size. Among the 26 provincial regions of the Great Jin, it ranked within the top 5. Several famous ice-attributed materials and medicinal herbs grew there. Consequently, cultivators who practiced ice element cultivation techniques often gathered in the region. By drawing upon the ever-present glacial qi, they could accelerate their cultivation. Moreover, when fighting cultivators of other elements, they would naturally hold the advantage. In all the places Han Li had visited before, whether the heavenly south or the scattered star seas the land experienced 4 seasons. Rarely had he traveled to a place governed by a single climate. Now, however, his cultivation had reached such heights that even the bitterest cold posed no threat to him. At first, the endless white landscapes filled him with a faint sense of wonder. But after several days, even that novelty faded. During his journey, he encountered a few other cultivators, but he remained far enough away that none of them noticed him. Such caution required little effort. 5 days after entering the Shuang region, Han Li finally stopped before a small and desolate mountain range. Though unremarkable in appearance, the mountain possessed a spirit vein of acceptable quality. Floating high in the air, Han Li sensed the dense spiritual qi within the mountain and nodded in quiet satisfaction. Then he snorted coldly. In the next moment, he descended like a falling meteor and landed directly upon the mountain peak. The impact sent tremors rolling down the slopes. Several small beasts were flung into the air before collapsing unconscious. Even the few cultivators residing within the mountain were thrown into chaos. Cries of alarm echoed throughout the area. A crushing pressure suddenly descended upon them. Some found themselves unable to even lift their bodies from the ground, while others struggled to breathe as though an invisible restriction bound them. Soon afterward, 3 streaks of light shot up from different parts of the mountain and flew directly toward Han Li. When Han Li saw them approaching, azure light flashed across his body. His figure blurred. Moments later, he had transformed into a sinister old man with a thin goat's beard. Since his body was still shrouded in radiant light, he was unconcerned that the incoming cultivators might glimpse his true appearance. The 3 streaks of light soon arrived and faded away, revealing 2 black-robed old men and a large man dressed in grey robes. The younger and larger man stood at the front, while the 2 old men hovered slightly behind him. Han Li raised an eyebrow but found nothing particularly unusual. The large man was a mid-core formation cultivator, while the 2 old men were both late foundation establishment cultivators. Furthermore, all 3 practiced the same cultivation technique. Before Han Li could speak, the grey-robed man swept his spiritual sense toward him with obvious anger. But the moment his senses touched Han Li, his expression changed drastically. The anger vanished instantly, replaced by a respectful smile. "This junior is the Li clan master, Li Zhongtian," the large man said with deep respect. "May I ask if senior has any commands? I will do my utmost to assist you." Despite his polite tone, a trace of unease lingered in his heart after seeing Han Li's fearsome appearance. Han Li looked at him indifferently. "I have no interest in your clan," he said in a hoarse voice. His tone was icy colder even than the biting winds that swept across the frozen mountains. "I have taken a liking to this mountain." He paused briefly. "You may leave. I will give you half a day to prepare." The large man did not dare show the slightest trace of anger upon hearing those words, though his heart darkened with resentment. Still forcing a respectful smile onto his face, he said, "Senior, our Li clan settled in the Snow Chain Mountains with the permission of Senior Long. If Senior wishes to take these mountains, perhaps informing him first would be appropriate." "Do you truly believe that this Senior Long can pressure me?" Han Li rolled his eyes coldly, his tone turning hostile. "You have half a day to leave. If anyone finds this unacceptable, they may come seek me themselves." The large man's expression stiffened. Just as he opened his mouth to say more, Han Li flicked his sleeve. An azure gust instantly burst forth. Startled, the large man hurriedly wrapped his body in protective light, but the moment he did, he felt a crushing spiritual pressure descend upon him. The 2 old men who were flying with the aid of magic tools had no time to react. The gale struck them head-on and sent them tumbling helplessly through the air. Panic flooded their hearts. They tried to raise their defensive techniques, but it was as though their magic power had suddenly been sealed. No matter what they did, they could not circulate it. In that moment, pure terror seized them. Fortunately, the violent wind quickly dissipated on its own. The 2 old men finally managed to steady themselves in mid-air. When they looked up again, Han Li had already vanished without a trace. One of the old men swallowed nervously and turned toward the grey-robed man. "Venerable ancestor, when did he leave?" The grey-robed man's expression was extremely unsightly. After a long moment, he let out a deep sigh. "Order everyone to gather their belongings immediately," he said gravely. "We have 4 hours to leave the mountain." "What?" One of the black-robed old men blurted out in disbelief. "Are we truly abandoning the mountains our Li clan fought so hard to seize from the 7 Snow Chain brothers? We have not even lived here for 100 years. With someone this tyrannical will Senior Long truly sit idly by?" The other old man remained silent, but the reluctance in his eyes clearly showed he shared the same thoughts. It had taken immense effort for the Li clan to establish themselves here. Abandoning it so easily was almost unbearable. "Have you both lost your senses?" The grey-robed man snapped coldly. "You dare provoke someone with that level of cultivation?" His voice grew heavier. The spiritual pressure he released was even greater than Senior Long's. "I suspect he is a mid-nascent soul cultivator." The 2 old men froze. "With such strength," the grey-robed man continued, "Senior Long will undoubtedly turn a blind eye to this matter, no matter what relationship we have with him." He sighed again. "And despite his tyrannical demeanor, that Senior still gave us time to leave. If he had slaughtered us without warning, do you think anyone would avenge us?" His eyes grew cold. "Do not forget, in the cultivation world, might makes right. The only reason we were able to seize this mountain in the first place was because we were slightly stronger than the 7 Snow Chain brothers. The other factions acknowledged us for that reason. As long as the core disciples of our Li clan survive, we can always fight for another spirit mountain." He paused before finishing grimly. "That is far better than dying beneath the hands of a nascent soul cultivator." The 2 old men slowly nodded, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. Without another word, the 3 of them turned into streaks of light and shot toward the mountain below. About the time it took to finish a meal later, the once quiet mountain range suddenly burst into activity. Cultivators hurried back and forth between buildings and cave residences. Although panic lingered on their faces, their movements remained surprisingly orderly and efficient. A few hours later, 2 large groups of cultivators rose into the sky and departed the mountain in a grand procession. Among the nearly 300 cultivators, the vast majority were at the chi condensation stage. Only around 20 rode flying magic tools. Nevertheless, they moved swiftly and soon vanished into the distant horizon. Such a large movement naturally drew the attention of neighboring territories. Scouts were immediately sent to investigate what had happened. The Li clan gave them a simple and honest answer. The Snow Chain Mountains had been seized by a nascent soul cultivator. The news shocked the scouts greatly, and they hurried back to their respective factions to report the matter. A cultivator of immense power had suddenly appeared in the region. Such a development could bring either great fortune or great disaster. But judging by how he had forcibly taken the Snow Chain Mountains, the latter seemed far more likely. The surrounding factions, shaken by the news, quietly began preparing escape plans in case the situation deteriorated. Meanwhile, Han Li stood atop a massive rock deep within the Snow Chain Mountains. His spiritual sense had spread throughout the area as he carefully inspected the entire mountain range for any hidden cultivators. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes again. A satisfied expression appeared on his face. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned several formation flags and formation plates. His body blurred. In a flash, he moved rapidly across the mountain range, placing the formation tools at various key points before returning to his original position. The flags and plates had vanished from his hands. Moments later, a dense white mist suddenly emerged from nowhere. Within seconds, it engulfed the entire mountain. Han Li nodded slightly after confirming the formation had activated correctly. This particular formation was something he had obtained from Old Devil Qian's storage pouch. Although it would not pose much threat to a nascent soul cultivator, it was still a high-grade formation capable of easily blocking core formation cultivators. With that matter settled, Han Li retrieved a spirit beast pouch and tossed it into the air. He formed a series of hand seals and pointed toward it. The pouch opened. A burst of icy ki poured out. From within emerged more than a dozen crystalline, snow-white, 6-winged frost centipedes. The moment they appeared, the centipedes began circling above Han Li, excitedly chirping softly. The glacial qi of the surrounding land clearly delighted them. With a simple mental command, Han Li released them. The dozen frost centipedes quickly disappeared into the white mist surrounding the mountain. With both the illusion formation and the hidden frost centipedes guarding the area, even an early nascent soul cultivator would find it difficult to intrude. Satisfied with these precautions, Han Li activated his spirit eyes and searched for the location where the spiritual qi was most concentrated. Once he found it, he used an earth movement technique to burrow deep underground and carved out enough space to release his hidden fortune mansion. After finishing the arrangements for the rest of his spirit insects, Han Li entered his hidden chamber. He sat down cross-legged. Slowly he closed his eyes and began meditating. Time flowed quietly past. When Han Li finally opened his eyes again, his mind and heart had become perfectly calm. He slapped his storage pouch and took out a red gourd. Tilting it slightly, he poured a thumb-sized emerald pill into his palm. The pill glistened brilliantly and released an overwhelming medicinal fragrance. This was the very reason for his journey. The nascent cultivating pill. According to Old Man Fu of the Nine Serenities, sect refining this pill would require half a year. Han Li had no intention of delaying any longer. Taking the pill would not only strengthen his current power, but also greatly benefit his future cultivation. He swallowed the pill without hesitation. Immediately a gentle chill spread through his body. But in the next moment the chill transformed into threads of scorching heat. Han Li quickly put away the gourd and closed his eyes again. His hands formed a cultivation seal. Soon he entered deep meditation. If one could peer inside his body at that moment, they would see something astonishing. His 2-inch-tall nascent soul had opened its eyes. It spat out strands of azure flame, slowly refining the emerald medicine pill. The hidden chamber remained silent. Day after day passed. Before anyone noticed, half a year had slipped by. Throughout that time, the snow chain mountains remained peaceful and undisturbed. However, several waves of visitors had arrived. Some were high-grade cultivators from nearby factions. Others were wandering core formation cultivators who had come from distant regions to pay their respects. There was even a silver-robed old man, the only early nascent soul cultivator in the area, who personally came to visit Han Li. But no matter who arrived, they were all met with the same endless white mist. After shouting loudly into the formation and receiving no response, they could only leave. The silver-robed old man, however, refused to accept such treatment. He forcefully entered the mist. Yet moments later he was driven out again by a series of sharp insect cries. When he emerged, one of his arms had already been sealed within a block of ice. Although the injury was not permanent, the experience left him deeply shaken. He no longer dared to enter the mist again. With a helpless sigh, he turned and flew away. The power of the 6-winged frost centipedes had clearly demonstrated that Han Li's abilities far exceeded his own. Provoking such a superior cultivator would only be courting disaster. Before long, factions located tens of thousands of kilometers away had also learned the news. The snow chain mountains had been occupied by a mysterious senior of extraordinary power. Even the regional ruler, Senior Long, did not dare provoke him. This revelation astonished everyone. From that point on, the area within a 500-kilometer radius of the snow chain mountains became a forbidden zone. All passing cultivators carefully detoured around it, fearing they might accidentally offend the hidden expert residing within. Fortunately, nearly a year passed without incident. The mysterious cultivator never interfered with outside affairs. Gradually, the surrounding factions relaxed. One day, Han Li finally completed the refinement of the nascent cultivating pill. His eyes slowly opened. A bright light bloomed across his face, the unmistakable expression of success. If you loved this story, please consider supporting us through the donation link below. Your support allows us to keep bringing you the best and most immersive video. We truly appreciate you being here with us.